Welcome, I'm Jerrel from Sungrand, the developer of the Silver Falls games. Today, I want to share with you how I created the soundtracks for our latest release, Silver Falls Gaiden, Deathly Delusion Destroyers, plus Ruby River. I'll also offer some insight into the soundtracks for the other Silver Falls titles as well, but today I just want to focus on Gaiden, Deathly Delusion Destroyers. So, for starters, I have a Tanglewood mandolin here. This is a solid linden top with a veneer, and it is the generally, if you hear a mandolin take the lead in a Silver Falls track, it is most likely going to be this fellow. I picked this mandolin because it has such a warm, complex, deep sound to it, and it offers such a fascinating texture. And you might recognize if I play a little bit of it here. It's really quite interesting in its depth and warm texture to it, so I'm very pleased with the timbre of this instrument. It's one of my favorites to play. This features quite prominently in Gaiden, Deathly Delusion Destroyers, and also some other soundtracks that you might recognize as well. Next, we'll take a look at the instrument's big brother, which is the Octave Mandolin. This is an Aura Octave Mandolin, or Hora. This instrument comes from, I ordered this over from Romania. That is where they are manufactured. Both these strings use phosphor bronze for these instruments. There's such a beautiful deep warmness to this instrument that I think is quite difficult to replicate with any other instrument. I think this is quite fantastic. Now this uses a custom string gauge setup for me to play. I'm actually using mandola strings for these bottom two in order to put more focus on the depth and the bass and warmth of this instrument. That is an Octave Mandolin, which features quite prominently in Gaiden, Deathly Delusion Destroyers, especially in the acoustic battle music. Next, while we're sticking with the mandolin family, let's have a look at this electric mandolin. This is a nameless brand, so it would have been manufactured for a particular brand, and then whenever factory I got this ordered in from, just removed the badge so they can sell it at a lower price. I don't know what brand this is supposed to be. It's just using typical nickel electric strings. It's not plugged into an amplifier. It's probably a bit late in the evening to plug this into an amplifier, but I'm able to create a number of effects. So you hear this very prominently. This is primarily the instrument that is used for the track in Gaiden, Deathly Delusion Destroyers. When you encounter a character, sometimes in your campsite, you'll hear that sort of a vintage rock sound that I really wanted to sound like something maybe something that the Tornadoes would do or something like that. So I used that instrument to create a unique sound that you don't really hear anywhere else in the Silver Falls series, and I'll be using this in future tracks as well. Okay, and now while we're still in the mandolin family, this is an instrument that took me quite a while to create. So I started with a Redding 3/4 guitar, Tobacco Sunburst, of course. It's quite handsome to just give an eyeball to. And this has been modified into a mandocello, so it plays an octave lower than a mandola. You can hear how deep the tone is. This took months of work. I modified the instrument so it would have 8 tuning machines, which would allow me to have the mandocello tuning, and it uses high quality mandocello strings, which are quite rare and expensive to replace. So I condition the strings and I use them for as long as possible. This features very prominently in Gaiden Deathly Delusion Destroyers, especially in the title theme music. If you are playing the game, I believe past 11 o'clock, you'll hear a piece of music which also features this instrument prominently. Many of the instruments that I use in Silver Falls, in terms of the acoustic instruments, will be either heavily customized, heavily modified, in order to create an interesting sound. One primary example of that is my 8-string acoustic bass. Now, this started out life as a normal acoustic bass. It took about a year of customizing, fine-tuning, and constantly improving and adjusting. And instead of just having 4 bass strings, it now has 4 bass strings plus strings that are octave up. So you'll hear that here. So you can hear it's got this interesting, unique growl to it with a complex amount of depth to it. I think the color of this instrument is quite interesting. And this is, generally I use this in the battle tracks to give it some body and depth. And it is an interesting sound. And I also use this in White Inside Its Umbra, the campsite music as well. And I'm quite proud of that instrument because getting it functional took an immense amount of work. Careful there. Next, in terms of customized instruments, this is something that I also used in White Inside Its Umbra, but also for the camp music in Deathly Delusion Destroyers, and also in some of the battle music as well. So this is a nylon string mandola customized. It's got a unique tone that's quite difficult to achieve any other way. You also have a tenor guitar set up on the other neck as well. But I generally use this for the nylon string mandola neck. Now, to compare that, I have a typical mandola with phosphor bronze strings, and look at that, I just put these strings on here. I haven't even had time to cut the strings yet. But you can compare that previous sound to this one. You might recognize the sound of that. This is quite a cheap instrument that I took a gamble on. I ordered this from China and it was very rough. It was a very rough instrument. So this took a significant amount of work to get playable, not just physically playable, but also get a good, interesting, deep sound. I generally won't use instruments that don't have significant tonal complexity and quality to them. Tonal complexity and tonal quality is something that's extremely important to me. And so I'm quite happy with this instrument, as I spent a significant amount of effort in order to get it playable and to create a sound that I'm happy with to use in recordings. You've probably been looking at this funny fellow back here. This is a small bodied acoustic guitar. The scale length is quite normal. It's a Harley Benton, and this particular model does not have the pickup. I wanted this particular instrument for its tonal quality. So, you might think this might sound small or tinny. It actually has a fair amount of volume considering its size, but having the smaller body results in a brighter, punchier tone that just is a bit sparkles a bit more. I have customized ebony bridge pins in there. It's got a lovely bone saddle, and the strings are aluminum bronze. So the trick to getting very good, interesting tone out of your guitar is to use a string that's made out of a material that no one's ever heard of before. And if you tell people a material they've never heard of before, that makes the guitar sound better. So, in all seriousness, the aluminum bronze accentuates the high values to get that bit more of a sparkle while adding a depth to it. I think I got that right. So I use this in the diner music for Gaiden Deathly Delusion Destroyers titled Waiting for the Sun to Rise. I actually haven't played that in months since I finished recording the track. So that's one instrument I use to help get an interesting and unique tone with that music. You'll see this lovely fella here is an Ibanez Art Core, and generally I use this for the vast majority of any electric guitar work that I have to use, but I have other guitars that I use if I'm playing more fast-paced 80s rock. I'll use different instruments for that, but for the electric guitar that is played in Deathly Delusion Destroyers, I use this guy for its complex, warm tones. But when I need something that's high-flying and punching hard, I'll use other instruments as well, especially for the Guardians and Metal Exterminators soundtrack. I don't use this guitar. I use something a bit punchier and brighter. And for the Ruby River soundtrack, I use a special MIDI controller device. This is an electronic wind instrument. So this mouthpiece here lets me blow air and control my armature a bit by biting down and controlling this mouthpiece here. And I have these electronic control pads here. And this is what I used for much of the Ruby River soundtrack as well. So when you hear that flute sounding music, I'm actually controlling it with this instrument here. And this is an Akai Professional EWI, so electronic wind instrument, and it operates via USB. There are touch panels on the back. You can select your octave and you can bend your notes here as well. So that's how I was able to get more expressive with the instrument, and I'm able to control the velocity of the music by the amount of air that I blow through the mouthpiece. So that's all that I've got to share with you today. I hope you've enjoyed the look at some of the instruments I use to create the music for Gaiden Deathly Delusion Destroyers and Ruby River. If you'd like to see the process on how I actually create the music, I'll be happy to create a new video and share that with you at some point in the future. I often will, depending on the music that I'm writing, most of the time I'll write polyphonically, which means I'll focus on one core melody that will identify, or a leitmotif that will serve as the identity of that piece, and I'll record different segments, different parts of the song, and then I will move on to another instrument and I will record different parts that I can layer together. So I don't write the music using chords. I write it using melodies, counter melodies, bass lines, and I'll write them in a way to where I can layer the music and create interesting movements in the music as those different standalone leitmotifs all come together and blend in different ways. So I hope you enjoyed the look at these instruments, and I just want to give a special thanks to all of the patrons who have been contributing to Silver Falls. You guys have made this hugely possible. All of these instruments I purchase out of pocket, especially when I need to customize the instruments. All of the parts I have to pay for out of pocket. So all the patrons that have been contributing via Patreon, you guys have actually helped me pick up instruments, and especially parts to customize these instruments, especially when I need to replace the strings. That can get costly as well for all the instruments. So thank you, especially thank you to everyone in Patreon, and also for helping keep the lights on in the studio during the past 12 months, which has been extremely challenging and very rewarding, because we've launched our final games for the 3DS and Wii U, and I'm very happy to be able to get those games to you. So please stay tuned. I'll create more videos and share more behind the scenes with you soon. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you around.